Hey, hello everybody. I'm very happy to be here. I hope more people join us. But if not, that's okay because we're going to start recording. So my name is Carla de Rosal. I work here in this building in Harold Hall. I am a clinical assistant professor and I work in the Department of Teaching and Learning. I have been working with SMU since 2014. And my pronouns are she, her, hers, and ella. I'm originally from Mexico. I invite you to share your pronouns with me. I like to have environments that are inclusive for everybody. So whenever you want to refer to you using a different pronoun, just let me know. So I think that there's just like there's three of us. I have already met Kendall, but if you can add your name in the window, those of you via Zoom, so I can get some information from you. And also, hello, how are you? And your interest, and why are you interested in this topic? That would be very helpful. I think that Kendall is going to be looking at my chat to let me know what is happening there. So, yes. So today I want to discuss with you. Is more a discussion because we are all working in higher education, have experiences with students, and it's not that I know everything. I'm just here to share what I have learned while working with students from linguistically and culturally diverse backgrounds. So I'm going to invite you also to share with me. I want to talk a little bit about which are some of the things that I do in my classroom for them to be able to participate in the oral and written activities. It's also very important for me to support them when they are trying to access and produce the complex language of higher education. And hopefully in my classroom, they develop a sense of they feel more proficient in English and feel more confident, and I promote an environment where I'm very, very concerned about the well-being of all my students, particularly those who are in a context that is so new, like being in a university in another country, or being for the very first time in school in the United States. That's the case of some of my students. I think that we all need to be more interested in doing this. We have more and more international students. We also have the children of immigrants that attend school, adult immigrants that decide to come to school, to graduate school. That is the case of some of my students. And it's very important for them to receive support so they feel that they can actually be successful in an American university. I have experience in this. Well, first of all, I was an international student. Oh, so I think that somebody needs to mute because it's running the. Yes, thank you. So I was like many of our students. I was an international student. I started my PhD in the United States. And I realized that even when I was able to pass the GRE and the TOEFL, I still needed support in graduate school to feel more confident. I am also experiencing this in this context because I was a classroom teacher in American schools in K-12. I also in SMU have some students in undergrad that are international students. And in my graduate classes, I also have students who have been living here in the United States for a long time. They have been teachers, but they come to school for the very first time in the United States, and they have never been in a college in the US. So they feel very out of place, very stressed about the expectations. And this is particularly visible when it comes to writing. And so that is why I'm interested in this. And so for today, I'm going to share with you some of the resources that I use in my classroom and why I am using them. I am going to share some of the support practices that I have embedded in my PowerPoints in my classes. And then hopefully at the end, we can have talk a little bit more about the topic and share some ideas. And again, this is just coming from a place in which I want to learn from you as much as sharing about my practice. I feel that I am a work in progress. Okay, thank you, John. I'm happy that you are joining us, and I see that you have a significant percentage of students that are linguistically diverse. I hope this is helpful. But again, it could be one of many meetings that we have, because I think that we need to learn together about this. Is necessary, is very fulfilling, but it's not necessarily easy, and it's better to do things together. And so, which are some of the things that I do in my classroom? My first session with CTE, and I don't know if there's a recording, we can make it available or something. I talked about connecting to background knowledge. So the last time that I presented, like almost for an hour, I showed all the things that I do for that. And this is important because we never should assume that students understand how to do school in the United States. And then also it's very important for them to feel that whatever they bring to the table, which is a lot, is honored, leveraged, and appreciated. So that is what I discussed in my previous presentation. Today, I'm not going to go into that, but if you want to take a look, I think that we can make it available for you. And then I do what is the very one of the best practices in the field of second language acquisition, that is offering comprehensible input. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, just giving you some examples of what I do. I am very interested in promoting students' interactions. Students feel a lot more comfortable talking with, among each other than actually responding to me when they don't feel comfortable yet with me. They don't know how am I going to interact with them. So I'm very purposeful having them talk to one another and then invite people to share. And then the last part that for me is probably the most important, because we have students who are proficient in English. They are able to be here. They have passed all their requirements of exams, but we should never assume that they know which are the expectations for how we use language in the United States. So we just say to them, hey, you need to do APA or MLA, and you need to write an essay. And sometimes for some students, it's like, what do you want from me exactly? And so we need to understand that we use language in different ways, in different places, and the ways in which we write, for example, in Latin America versus in the United States could be different. In the United States, everything is very linear, and for us, it's a different way to present information. And so in that, I'm very purposeful. So these are the topics that I'm going to discuss, and I'm going to be mindful of the time because I tend to talk too much. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Just I'm worried that I'm so into sharing my examples that I'm not going to be able to have an interactive presentation. So if you have any questions or comments, I really appreciate them in the chat. Or if you want to engage in a more in-depth conversation, which I'm always super open, this is my email. I don't know why I have a celebrity kind of email, carla@smu.edu. So I always come to the classroom, particularly when I have students who are from different languages and cultures, thinking that it's my responsibility to make sure that they feel comfortable learning and participating in my classroom. It's up to me, that's my job. And I also feel that it's my responsibility to re-socialize students in how to communicate effectively in the United States and also in the field of education. That, I think, is part of what I teach, beyond teaching methods of how to teach math or how to teach assessment, how to do assessment. I also feel that when students are from another language and cultures, I'm kind of a cultural translator. So I talk to them and I give them feedback about their email communications, the way they need to talk to their supervisors, and help them communicate more effectively in the United States, because I wish many times when I was a student that I had more support in that way, so I would have felt more confident moving around in the university and in the field I am working in. So, I have this quote, that language is not a genetic gift, it's a social gift. Learning a new language is becoming a member of the club, the community of speakers of that language. And so for me, when you feel that you don't have enough competency in the language, you feel that you don't belong. So that is why even when I have an accent, when I sometimes make mistakes, I try to tell them that a lot is about understanding which are the ways in which we're expected to communicate in the United States and in the school in general. And so I typically use in my class these two books, and these come, and just because as a former researcher, I want to honor the people with the ideas, and so I use the work from Echeverria, Vogt, and Short. This is a group of educators in the state of California that developed this system to support the students in content areas. I use the book in my classes, and they also inform my practice. I also use the book of Gibbons, Pauline Gibbons. She's an Australian scholar, and she talks about how when we scaffold the use of language, and we are also scaffolding learning. So sometimes teachers who are math teachers in K-12 say, well, I'm a math teacher, I'm not a language teacher. And I would say, well, you are always a language teacher, because the language of math involves the way in which we think about math, how we use information, which are the things that we value in math versus in science versus in the humanities. So we teach anything, we need to teach the language of the discipline. That's part of our job. So this is the book from the SIOP model, and this is the other book, and it's just because honoring the people that do the work. And so, as I said, the first thing that I do is connecting to background knowledge, and I talked about this in my previous presentation. And just for those who were not in the previous presentation, it's a lot about connecting instruction with the background of students. Hello, at the beginning of each class, I try to make a point to know where students come from, to understand what is their goals, and that helps me invite them to share about how things are going in their context, finding resources connected with their interests, knowing about their history. So I always have them talk about, for example, the history of their name. So I developed the skill of saying it correctly. And also I want to know about where is their family from, and that when they talk about their names, I get to know if they are first generation students or if they have lived in Texas all their lives. And so that helps me connect with them, and then they feel that all that they are is welcome in my classroom. That helps me also connect with their interests and their background. And then I also always connect what I'm doing in one class with the previous class in a very explicit way, because I'm not assuming that the students are making that connection. So as you will see in my previous presentation, I have a slide where I'm connecting what I did before with today, because they have a life, because they are not thinking about my class all the time. So that helps them make a connection, and that also helps with the language development, because if I see that the topic of today is connected with the other one, I can start making a connection between concepts. And then today I'm going to talk a little bit more about emphasizing vocabulary or key concepts. I do that very purposefully when I start almost any presentation. This is my previous presentation here, so I'm not going to show it right now. But for example, when it comes to vocabulary, because a lot of concepts, a lot of people tell me when they teach physics in high school, I don't have time for that. Well, you need to have time, because when we talk about key concepts, we define them, we find examples from the real world, we categorize them. We are actually developing conceptual thinking. So the more we can have a concept discuss in depth, having students talking about what something is and or is not, the more they are going to develop knowledge. So I used a work on the conceptual thinking, in which I have students, for example, if we're going to talk about culture. So I always write the directions and I tell them orally, which is another support for English learners, for multilingual learners, which is a more appropriate term. I give directions orally and also have them written. And so if they don't understand something, or they were not paying attention, or they were listening but something was not clear, it's always posted. But when we are discussing concepts, I always have them think about examples. For example, identify 3 examples of culture that you, or of community or of power, and then be ready to explain your example. So I have them connect to their context, so the word is there, and then identify 3 non-examples, and then I have them explain why not. And then I bring them together to talk about that. So whenever I'm introducing something that is going to be centered to the conversation, like, I don't know, if I'm going to talk about culturally responsive teaching, I want for all of us to be in the same page when it comes to what is culture. So there's a lot of discussion, a lot of thinking about my context, and then I have them talk to the others, and they start sharing to one another. And identifying what are characteristics of something and what are non-characteristics. This works for anything, you know, as I tell to the physics teachers, this works for energy, this works for a linear relationship in mathematics, this works for democracy, this works for anything, and it really helps students like grapple important concepts in a way that they feel comfortable, and they actually are able to use the language with more comfort. There's a layer of culture all the time. So if we have a student who comes from Venezuela, and we're going to be talking about democracy, and well, they have been living in a non-democracy for a while, and so it's even, there's a cultural layer there, in which by having students discuss this, we are also honoring their experiences and having them talk about the content without feeling threatened, because they first start with themselves and then in small groups, and then we have that shared with one another. I also use a resource from K-12 that is called the Freyer model, in which, for example, I teach assessment, and so I have them work on their own, probably first having to complete it to see what they are coming from, like to see what they know, and then like rewriting their definitions, in which they write what is assessment, thinking about facts or characteristics, examples and non-examples. And this is very helpful because, for example, assessment is a term that there are many misconceptions, and as they start writing and thinking and sharing with one another, it helps them actually like get a better sense. And these boxes can change, you know, and as I tell teachers teaching, again, thinking about mathematics teachers, because sometimes they tell me, well, these things don't necessarily apply to math. Well, they do, you know, for example, what is a linear relationship, define it, and then characterize it. Like if there is a graph, if there is an equation and there is a graph, you start like making connections, and you can compare it with a non-linear one, for example, or anything. And so I use that one. And then that is for vocabulary concepts. And then I also do this comprehensible input, which is I always speak considering student diversity. So I had an opportunity to observe master teachers in Colorado as a doctoral student, and they were master teachers in mathematics, but I never understood what they were saying because they were not speaking with the required volume or facing the student or pausing, or they were constantly changing the topic. So I remember as a doctoral student who was already in a doctoral program, who had a high level proficiency in English, thinking, how hard it is to be in this classroom because the teacher is not thinking about how they are communicating. And so I decided to take myself and to see how much I change the topic, how much I don't emphasize important topics or concepts. And so I try to do that and be very mindful about that. Another thing is explaining the tasks clearly. This has a component of language and culture. So I never assume that students know what I want from them because many of them have never been in the University of the United States. So if I say, I don't know, a persuasive essay, for some people that will mean one thing and for other people that will mean another thing. And so I am very mindful about that. And then I make meaning using many techniques that I integrate a lot of videos. So if I'm going to be talking about something abstract like scaffolding instruction, so I show a video about it, and when I'm showing the video, I'm stopping it and I'm showing them what it is. This helps everybody, not just English learners. Sometimes people think, like some teachers think, this is too much. Well, this is beneficial for everybody and it's actually our job. And so it just makes us better instructors. So when it comes to speaking, consider student diversity, super important, the volume and speed. Sometimes when I get excited about something or the first day of class that I'm a little bit stressed about the new, I speak very fast and with a thick accent. So I need to be very mindful about that. Paraphrasing and repeating. So if I have an idea that is at the center of the class, I am bringing it up, and many times I have it posted in a slide. And I paraphrase and repeat. So for example, there's this term scaffolding that I was mentioning that is supporting students, offering student support until they achieve individual proficiency. So I say scaffolding and then I define it so they keep listening to that. I don't necessarily use idioms because I struggle with them, but when my instructors used to use them, I didn't even know what they were talking about. So it was very confusing for me. Explain of the course task clearly. I offer step-by-step directions and I have them written and in an oral way, and they appear multiple times. I use visuals and exemplars all the time. So many times I model what I'm supposed to be doing. So if I tell them go to Canvas, I go to Canvas, show them where it is. And it's just because my students like yours are there really wanting to learn. And the more I can make the experience something that is not very stressful, the more they are going to be feeling comfortable and more at ease learning. So for example, and also I use a lot of mental maps and graphic organizers. I have some examples. I use a lot of videos and also model processes and tasks I was saying. So let me show you. So for example, I have this embedded PowerPoints, and I said, they know that I said, let's watch. So we watch a video, there's a video link, and I put it there because I want them to be able to go back and see it and put the closed captions. So they have it there, they can go back. And then I always tell them, please pay attention to this because I give them a task. So, okay, I'm going to watch a video, what I'm supposed to be looking at. So please pay attention to all the things that the teacher is doing in order to elicit the students' thinking, and then record what you notice and be able to share with the class. And this is always something that they know that something is coming, And then, for example, if I'm teaching a process, like the process of assessment, I have the visual and I go step 1, step 2, step 3. And then when I'm going more in depth into the step, I bring again the visual. Okay, now we're going to step 1. So the idea that assessment is a process in education that typically has 4 steps, and we're going to talk about step 1 is clear. So I do that when I'm talking about the generalized idea of assessment. And I also use it when I'm offering an example. So for example, if I'm assessing self-esteem as a construct, then I need in step 2 doing this, so they can see my example in the context of the process. And so in that way, it's easier than me just like talking. They can see, of course I don't write everything, but then I can refer to whatever is. I'm very good acting out. Right now I'm in front of faculty, I'm a little bit self-conscious, but when I'm acting, when I'm teaching, I'm very like standing up and okay, step 1, step 2, and I go back. And so that is something that is very helpful, I think, for them. So that's what I do for comprehensible input. And I'm sorry I'm rushing, but I want to have time, just if you have any questions and if you have any comments for me. Promoting student interaction. So when I was a doctoral student, and I'm kind of brave and daring, I was terrified just to speak in the classroom because I have a very thick accent. And I was very worried about like listening to myself speaking in a language in which I still feel highly uncomfortable and sounding weird and not smart, making a grammatical mistake orally. So I'm very mindful of that. And so I always try to embed interactions, and they are always embedded in my PowerPoints. So whenever I have them think about a concept, I have them talk with one another. I try to make groups. I'm going to show you how I do it, because I want also for them to collaborate with other students that they feel more at ease. So if I typically have, I don't know, there's a student that is my age, in my 50s, who is the first time in the university in the United States. But then there's a student who was born in the US, but is a Latino. And then there's another. So I make groups so everybody finds kind of a group where they can talk. But I change it depending on my goal. I also sample student participation. So I try to invite everybody and make them feel welcome. So, for example, I have a student, she's from Colombia. She's a very experienced teacher. She's new in the United States. She feels out of place, but she has a wealth of knowledge. So, Sandra, tell me a little bit about how this is done in Colombia. What are some similarities and differences? But I know about that because at the beginning of the semester, I learned that she was from Colombia. So I make a point of inviting different students, even if they don't raise their hand. And when I invite them in a way that they know that they value what they bring to the table. So tell me more, like, is this common in your country? How does the K-12 system works in Ecuador? And so they start sharing and talking about that. So again, my PowerPoints. So I say, okay, everybody, let's chat. At the beginning of any topic, I want you to go to your partner, people sitting next to you, and think about what you know about, I don't know, something new, the assessments that are used in Texas, and what are some things that you want to know about, and be ready to share with the class. And so then I invite them to share after that, or when I also have them work together. Okay, I'm going to invite you to review our resource. So you need to click in the link and discuss the following questions. What do you notice? What do you wonder about the STAR test? How does it connect with your experience and your practice? Be ready to share with the class. In this way, and I also have them give an opportunity for everybody to talk or to pass. So they are not forced to talk, but the group is required to give an opportunity to people to say, okay, they want to say something, and they can say, no, I pass, or yes, I want to say something. They love this. They really feel more at ease, and then I get to learn so much from my students. It also helps me like really see whatever I'm sharing is relevant, or if I need to like bring some other resources. So it's really very helpful, and I have them always embedded in different moments. So when I introduce a topic, for example, on when they are going to work in a task. I have like I make my tables, and sometimes they are repeated. For example, okay, sometimes I make groups of different teachers from different grade levels because I want them to share their experience. So I have a teacher from high school, another from middle school, another that is not a teacher yet, and an elementary teacher. So I have them share how student classroom management looks in different, and so they learn from one another. Sometimes I have them work in homogeneous groups, so they talk to people that are from their same grade level. And I also think about language in this sense. Again, sometimes I have people who I know have different levels of experience in the United States, and sometimes I have people who are new, all of them together are more experienced, so they can actually bend and talk. And sometimes I leave the room because I realize that sometimes they were not very interested to talk when I was around. I was like, I want to give you 5 minutes. I want you to tell me what you think about the syllables. And you really need to have some feedback for me when I come back. And they love it, and they typically give me feedback. And after they talk independently, I have a whole group. And this is where I act more as a teacher, as an instructor. So, but again, if you see, all the group is going to create a product to share, and you have here the directions. Create an anchor chart, divide the content, share with the class. I'm always giving directions in this way, and I see that they depend on them because I can see them looking at the directions. Even those who speak English as a first language, they are exhausted when they come to graduate school. So sometimes, the last thing, like if I give a list of directions, they're like, what did she say? Okay, it's back there, or it's in your PowerPoint. And that is just like, okay, we're taking care of here. The cognitive load of trying to make sense of what are my intentions or what are my requirements is removed, so they can actually engage in learning. And this is helpful for everybody. When it comes to sampling, sometimes what happens is that students who come from a cultural or linguistically diverse background, they feel out of place, and so they are very shy, like participating in some cultures, even like in mine. Sometimes it looks bad to be always the one who is like raising their hand. So I want to make sure that I hear from everybody. So I invite people to share, like even those who don't raise their hand, and I say, okay, I want to hear now from an elementary teacher, or now a high school teacher, or I have never heard anything about math. Don't you teach math? So, and I have them share, and then the background. Okay, and those of you who were not students in the United States, let's talk about collaborative learning in your country. And so people learn a lot from each other, and then you don't feel that you don't have anything to offer in the classroom, which is sometimes it's kind of lonely to be a foreigner in the classroom because you don't know if what you know is valued, and you were kind of shy. But if the professor makes a point to honor that you have a life in another country, some of my students arrived here when they were 30 or 21, or so they have a lot of things that they can share with us. And last but not least, and this is probably the most important part for me, I knew how to read and write in English. I went to a very high quality bilingual program in Mexico. I did very well in language testing. However, I've never been in a university in the United States, and I was very stressed with the requirements for writing. And I was even more stressed when it felt that I needed to know. And so I think I would have benefited a lot if my professors understood that we don't do school the same everywhere, and the expectations are different. And so so I used the book of Scaffolding Language, and this is the idea that I help a lot of students in reading and writing. So if we're going to read for the very first time a scientific article, I like click on it and show it and say, okay, this is the abstract. And this is where the methods are. And as a researcher, this is what I read. And in grad school, I was about to quit because I didn't know how to read strategically. So I went to a professor and said, I'm not going to survive this, because I was reading everything in the same level of intensity, and I thought it was my language and not the fact that I didn't know what to prioritize when I was reading. And it was thankful that one of my professors was very helpful in that. And so I also, it's important to contextualize the context on the background knowledge, making connection with the students already know. So like talking about, like how are lesson plans in your country, how is this done here, making comparisons of like how academic work is done in different places. And also I model language by offering examples of exemplary work. Outlines. Sometimes I help them gather information so they can feel that they are progressing, and I'm going to show you how. So when I scaffold listening and speaking, my PowerPoints have complete sentences all the time. I will be getting a lot of trouble with people who are experts in visual supports for presentations, but I don't care. Why? Because I wanted to be able to go back and look at what I said. And I also make available the video if they want to review. I record my classes because for those some students, this is like life or death or survival. And so I always organize my PowerPoints in sections so they know, okay, this is the other part. And this works for everybody, particularly if you're exhausted and come to school, dragging yourself to the classroom at 5:15. And so whatever I said is in my PowerPoint. Some things are not, it's impossible, but I typically, as you see here, I have ideas. So you can go back and say, what did Carlos say about listening and speaking? Well, everything is in the PowerPoint. PowerPoints are organized. I record the class and they can go back. When it comes to reading, I don't assume that they know how to read all the genres in the United States. A lot of my students have never read a scientific article. So I offer different sources. So I get to show practitioner articles from scientific journals and blogs from experts and other kinds. So they have different ways to access information. Sometimes I describe them. I typically click and say, okay, guys, this report from the Brookings Institute, which is a nonprofit that does this and that. And so I show, I address them, the critical readings of the class. I also offer them note-taking formats, and I have them discuss in a small and whole group. And I will show you how. So, guys, these are our options for reading. These are the links. I'm going just to show you a little bit so you know what to expect. So reading number 1, let me click. This is an academic article. I know that for some of you, this is something that you are looking for. For some of you, it's probably not familiar. This is from Kenji Euro. It's probably very high level. Some students are there and they're going to be reading about power. And then probably another article. This is another article from the American Institutes of Research. And in that way, I'm also socializing them on American, there are certain journals that are more valuable than others in the field, which are the journals of the field, how do you get to read them, which other institutions do you value in education, like think tanks and research organizations, and which are the more pop culture or not necessarily academic or practitioner sources that they can trust. I was telling you that for me, teaching language is inviting them to also be part of the club, in the sense that this is what we read, this is what we value, and this is how we access it. This book has been so useful for me as a student when I was in grad school, that for me was feeling completely foreign, because it was very difficult to know, like, I don't even know how to start reading this thing. And as a student who comes from another country, you're already self-conscious about your performance in this new environment. You have proved yourself in your context, but then I'm here and I'm shy. I don't want to talk. I'm worried about asking a dumb question with my accent. And then I didn't get the reading. And so is it because I don't speak English as well as I thought I did? But I had a professor that actually really talked about the sources when I was in grad school, and that really was very helpful for me. As I said, I always talk about the readings and click on them. I also offer different readings. This is kind of my job. I'm passionate about my job. This helps me become more knowledgeable, get out of my box of the same authors all the time. And so, of course, I put an article of Katia Escamilla from the CU Boulder, who's sending an article about bilingual education. But then I also offer another resource that is more oriented for principal and probably something else, an informative website. And so I sometimes give them choice, and I also give them all, and if some of them read them all, some of them read you, so I give them choice. It's work, but just the first time, and it also allows me to know what other people are saying that is not the same with people that I always read. And it makes me see that, there's a lot of work done by practitioners that I need to honor, because they are actually the ones working with children in K-12. I don't work in elementary or secondary middle schools anymore. It's also honoring where they are coming from, because if I only put articles of academia, it's like I am not valuing the people who are doing the work in what they may say is the real world, because I teach teachers, but I have not taught in a school for many, many years. So whenever I'm talking about a section, I always reference like I was telling you what I'm using, and I put the link so they can go back, because some of them want to learn more, and it's important just to know where is it coming from. And reference work, but right now it's even more useful to have the link there so they can go back and find it. And so I do that also. When I look at the readings, again, they are always in the PowerPoint. If I can, they are linked. If not, they are referenced and probably a picture or the link of the place where they can get it. I talk about the validity of the source. I say, okay, I really like this website. It's not an academic website, but it integrates, the work of academics and practitioners. I talk about it. I show them how to navigate it. And then I tell them, if you go here, because for me, I'm a curator too. Otherwise, it's just overwhelming. I don't even know what they value. It's just, and this is kind of expert knowledge that I think I need to share for them to belong in the club. That's our work. Again, there are complete ideas in my PowerPoint, and then there's a video. And so there's always, this systematic support. The note-taking formats is I get very excited, like most of us who teach and talk about stuff. But I tell them, okay, here are the ideas that I want you to be really paying attention. And I want you to tell me what it is, what is the connection, and you're going to come up with an application in the small groups. So some of them, and so this is in Google Docs, they click and they get in and they start completing. And I'm very honest and saying, I don't care if you are not looking at me. The act of note-taking is one of the most misunderstood and underestimating acts of learning. I want you to be taking notes, okay? And I'm going to tell you when I'm going to be speaking about things that are really very important. That really will have helped me sometimes, because sometimes as a non-expert and a non-native speaker, I had a headache just trying to make sense of everything that was happening. And if somebody had to tell me, okay, Carla, today we're going to discuss these concepts and you need to figure, or you have to answer these questions, it's a problem that you need to be able to address, that helps me frame my mind and really be just trying to capture those ideas. And then I have them share and talk and complete their formats. It also helps me think about what matters to me as an instructor and making more emphasis, because it's very easy when you love a topic just to start talking. And well, with this, I need to make sure, did I discuss everything? Did I like reference them to sources that will help them in all? If not, I need to go back to the drawing board. And then the idea of scaffolding writing, which was probably the most challenging for me. Hey, Carla, you need to write a literature review. I'm like, I don't even know what is that. So if I had had a rubric of, well, I need to approach my professors, and it took a lot of like feeling inadequate. Okay, can you show me an example of that? And so I found some new places. There's a website in Purdue. We probably have something here. I need to look for more. But I refer them to academic writing resources. And I also share about my experience. Hey guys, don't feel bad. Always ask me. They asked me to write a literary review, and I almost fainted because I have never seen one. And I felt I don't belong here. I don't belong here because you don't belong to the club. Until, you know, my professor, okay, let me show you some examples, Carla. And this is a book about that you can read, and it's not easy. And you can, I also give them a variety of sources. Sometimes students struggle writing about a topic because they come from a different culture. So I had this class in graduate school that was American educational policy. I'm like, I don't have a clue, I'm Mexican. And so the more I can build on their knowledge, okay, this is this, and that helps me as an instructor to, okay, they don't know, when talking about educational policy, not even American students understand that education is not discussed in the Constitution and that the 15th Amendment. So I need to put that there. So, okay, American Constitution doesn't talk about that. What does that mean? It's a lot of cultural struggle when you are not local. And the note-taking formats work. And I also am famous because I give very detailed formative feedback, but it's loving. So, and I even say, okay, can we meet? Yes, your ideas are awesome, but you really need to try to write following the formats that are used in the United States. So let me show you. You need to do this, you need to do that. And so I really think that that changed the trajectory of a student. And not all of them need it, but then I have fantastic students that I imagine failing because probably other professors will not see beyond the lack of format in the genre that they are expecting. So I honor the ideas. Look, this is wonderful, but you need to actually, like, let me show you an exemplar. And when I see great work, I share it and I talk about it. So, for example, I have I have some classes in which they are writing different. So there was a class in which they are writing a literature review. There was a class in which they were writing an evaluation of a educational resource. So I talk about what is the first part, the second part, what is the purpose, and I give them points. And I also give them a lot of resources, the beginner's guides to writing an essay in the US. Yeah. And I go through it and show them sometimes videos. And sometimes I am also socializing them into being teachers in the United States or future advocates. For example, this is communications to promote interest, how to create a brochure, and then making better PowerPoint presentations. A lot of students need that, and me too, I'm learning. How to write an evaluation is essay. And so I talk about it because writing is very cultural, and the expectations that we have and the expectations that writing for engineering are different probably than the ones that you have when you're writing for history or for science. Okay, science is claim, evidence. In history, you need to recognize the different perspectives and situate them in a context. We need to show them in our discipline how we write. And this is beneficial for everybody. I want just to make the point that a lot of our students have never wrote like high academic language for a particular discipline when they get to college. And even professionals, they don't remember, or they probably were not trained as much. The expectations have changed now. And so, for example, I have rubrics. The introduction, the purpose is this, you need to have this, and that, 20 points. And so I do that for each of the parts of the different parts of the genre. And I also comment on exemplary student work. I ask students, some students are shy and the one that happening, but some want me to share, and then we actually look at it, with the eyes of, we cannot do this yet, but that's what we want to do. So I have 10 minutes, and this is more or less what I do. At the beginning, it takes me time. The first time I have a class. But then it just becomes a source of joy to feel that I'm constructing something that can not only allows the students to get access to the knowledge, but also to feel very confident communicating about that knowledge and feeling more competent in a cultural space that is different. Not only foreigners or international students are learning to be part of a new community. If I am a student in literature, in history, in psychology, I need to learn to communicate how to be a psychologist. I have not done that yet. So I need to read an article and read it through the eyes of the expert that is my professor. And I need to learn to write, but that requires like teaching the language. And so that is what I'm up to. And you have any questions or comments?
Hello. Hi. It's nice to finally meet you in person.
That's great.
And
see you.
So others may not know me. I'm Linda Evans, and I work with Dr. Martha Kwan in the ESL program, teaching our international students.
That's wonderful.
So mine are the courses I designed are for our international graduate and undergrad students, and all departments and universities also help out in the intensive English program. So the question I have for you, because we try to make things as interactive as possible and give students, plenty of opportunities to speak. So in your courses for upcoming teachers, what are some of these specific interactive activities that you think are especially effective and that they really enjoy?
In the case of my students, they love to talk about their experiences in the workplace. So I present a topic, an idea, a concept, and like a strategy, and I have them think about how it looks like in their context. And so they seem to find that a lot more useful than whatever I have to offer, because it feels that it's coming from a place of like the real world. So I give them time, and then I see a lot of passion about that. Another activity, so it's like I'm not very crafty in the sense that having them stand or do things like that. Just have an opportunity to talk to another human being who is in a similar situation. It seems to be something that is very desired. So what I realize is that they don't like me to be around as much. Because they want to be able to talk more at ease. And so when I give them the task, I tell them, okay, remember that one of my priorities here is for you to get to know colleagues. You come here because a lot of them don't like to come to school. They would love for it to be online. And so I need to sell our approach. Like, you come here to network. So this is a place where you meet people. So I'm going to give you 7 minutes. The first 2, I want you to get to know the people where you're talking, to share how you're doing now with the test, and to talk a little bit about how were you impacted by the I don't know, by the range. So I give them opportunity to actually engage more socially, and then to attend the task. And that has really helped, because it seems that they have allowed themselves to develop a social connection with one another. The activities at the beginning of the year, where they share about their names. This is in the first presentation that I offered. When I invite them to share their name, I actually ask them about their family, the history of their name. So I start saying, my name is Carla. In Mexico, I'm Carla Teresa del Rosal Bujanda. Carla is the name of my father, it comes from my grandfather. And so getting to know the stories of the people, they like to talk about who they are and what they want to do. Yes.
Excellent. My students also teach us how to correctly pronounce their names, because we do pronunciation of English in the classes.
Yes.
So what the name means, why they were given it, how to pronounce it, as well as their background and majors and professions. So I love that. Thank you.
And I teach a class that is kind of difficult right now because we address topics that thankfully are still legal in the campus of Excelsior. We talk about equity, class, race, intersectionality, so deep in the heart. And so I have them sometimes, I ask questions, they write them in a post-it, and then they answer the question in anchor charts, and then I have them walk around and look at the answers of people, and then talk about the answers, but not having anybody being put on the spot. So I also very careful, students from minoritized groups never to feel that they need to teach people about things that are hard for them anyway. And so I have them write, and then they walk around and look at the wall, and then I have them go and sit down, and they were like, oh, I was so surprised. It's kind of anonymous, the first feedback, but then they will talk about the responses. So some parts of the interactions are anonymous, and that is kind of helpful.
Yes, I think a great question from Rachel. Do you want me to just read it?
Please.
Yeah. What are your recommendations for best practices in coaching writing for linguistically diverse students, particularly for grad students? How do you avoid simply editing and instead help the student learn best writing practices? You mentioned giving detailed formative feedback. Can you give some examples of how to provide that type of feedback in a way that is best supportive of students?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question and something that I'm still learning. So I think that thinking genre based, so okay, the purpose of this type of writing is this, and it has these different sections. And so let's talk about the sections because organization is key. So I start making that clear at the beginning, but sometimes students just start writing, So I try to, when I look at the work, saying, okay, we need the key here is organizing the information for the reader, and we need to see if you are achieving the goals of this type of writing. And so it's very hard. I sometimes have them go and rebuild on an outline, because sometimes just going on work that is already existent is kind of super difficult. It could be a lot of comments. So I said, many times there are fantastic ideas, or say, okay, this idea is great, this idea is great, but we need to organize them. And I also talk about the fact that you need to learn to write for this purpose, and it's not natural because you have not been socialized into it, but let's do it together. So why don't you try to reorganize these ideas as answering these questions? So all of this goes in the interaction, like the rationale for whatever, all of these are kind of the body, and then this is part of more of a conclusion. Here, you shouldn't have things that are conclusions yet. In this part, just put information without an opinion. And so I really go first to the organization, and I invite them to use Grammarly because it has been very helpful to have these kinds of support for me. So I could ignore the fact that I still am terrible using prepositions in English, and that makes me very self-conscious. I don't know if that helps. I'm open to talk to you anytime because I'm still learning about this, and it will be great to talk to you, Rachel, and to discuss this, because it's an area of my interest, because writing is so important in our professional life, and I think we need to learn how to teach it better. Yeah. Well, I'm here, please just let me know. I'm loving this opportunity to get to meet other people. I love teaching, and being able to talk about teaching is such a pleasure for me. I know that we are in our road to R1, but I think that teaching it has to be at the center of this process. And being a clinical, I'm proud of working here and seeing how teaching is so valued and the work of CT. Yeah.
Carla, I do have another one if no one else does. I missed the first few minutes. I just wrong location for me, but I was wondering what are the courses, you probably introduced them, but the courses that you're teaching, and also if you or someone else is teaching the EDU 4300 that Abby Pruitt had been teaching.
I will be teaching that one on the fall of 2024, so we need to collaborate and work together in that. I know that you guys like had a collaboration with Abby. Right now is Paul Polanco. He's an adjunct and a fantastic instructor. I can contact you guys with him, but I will teach that class. I teach all the bilingual and bilingualism classes. I also teach classes of methods for teachers in general, and I also teach assessment and cultural, a class that is called Diverse Learners, where we talk about all the issues of equity in American education. That's my favorite one. Yeah.
The reason I ask too is that the ESL volunteers that I recruit to interact with my students in class and outside of class, they used to come from all over the campus when we had big rooms. I mean, and they're just volunteers, not service learning. But as the rooms got smaller and the classes are a little small, I'm just focused on like the best type of ESL volunteer comes from these classes where they're learning to be teachers.
Oh, yeah.
And they're getting service learning credit for it too.
Yes.
So that's why, you know, I kind of focused on EDU 4300 in the recent past few years, several years actually.
Well, we can contact you with the students that I know. Yeah.
That would be great, because
Yeah,
we're still,
just-
even right now, I'm still matching students. and
Send me an
inviting them
email.
to class.
Send me an email, please. We
I
can
will.
collaborate.
Thanks, Carla.
Yes. You have another question.
No, it's not a question, just a quick announcement because, and I commented, we have ESL classes which support international students, undergraduate and graduate students, enhancing their proficiency, particularly speaking and writing. So if you find, I know I understand how difficult it might be individual instructor to take care of ESL linguistic needs, particularly when you manage large scale classes. So just feel free to contact us and we can provide more professional help, or we can tailor our support for particular students in your class specific needs. So feel free to contact us. And then also we have some online writing class. So students could take it on top of their regular academic schedule without concerning schedule conflict. So that's really helpful. Students could get more step-by-step writing assistance.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Please contact me if I need
Flyers. Flyers I carry everywhere.
Yeah. Sorry. No, you're good.
Did you decide where you're?
Could you share the recording with me? Could my share with my colleagues?
I don't think
And
so.
it'll be on our YouTube. Like here, we post all of them up there, yeah. So if you're ever looking for something,
That is why I think.
Thank you, you're so welcome.